Why is it good to have dependency injection? So it's about having simpler code dependencies between different classes. So there could be cases when your one class depends on the other class and somehow you'll get to acquire the reference. So instead of doing that manually and wiring all of that dependencies manually, you can rely on dependency injection frameworks to do that. So for example, here we have a coffee maker that needs a heater and a pump, and we have a pump that needs a heater as well. But instead of manually initializing these dependencies and creating instances, setting the correct fields with the right instances, we can let dependency injection framework to do that for us. So in the end, it's going to be less initialization code, and it could make the testing simpler because now dependencies won't be hardwired to the code base and its environment. So now let's take a look at the code, how it could look in our case, where the dependency injection could help us. So first of all, let's take a look at the stock update service. Here we could just inject data service that we use to do the actual querying. So we won't need to manually initialize it like new IX data service. Obviously that wouldn't work because it just says interface. Or for example, in the view activity, we have a view model. Again, there's no need to do new stock view model because that's going to be handled by this inject annotation for us automatically. And inside view model, again, portfolio repository is going to be set automatically through this constructor, and again, using this inject annotation. So basically, we'll just have to do a lot less work in the long run when we're going to have this dependency injection working. Setting up Dagger 2. So let's just get straight to the code base. Here we have our build file for Gradle, and here we can see that there's main Dagger dependency, and there are a few for Android. Also, there are two annotation processors, which are really important because most of the Dagger in functionality is implemented using code generation. So it's important not to forget these because you will get cryptic errors. Finally, you will need to create project application class and set it in the Android manifest file here. Application name, project application. So this project application file, this class, is going to be responsible for the initialization of Dagger and its main component, as we can see here. The main components is just an interface that we created, and we're going to take a look at it shortly. So when that's done, basically our application will be ready to use Dagger and its injection across the code base. Creating Dagger modules. Before we can start using Dagger, we'll need a main component interface. In this case, we could see in this example that coffee shop could be that. And we will also create multiple modules. And module is something that provides certain instances of the classes that need to be created manually. So maybe we'll need to have some kind of manual configuration for the class because Dagger wouldn't be able to automatically figure out how to create that instance of that specific class. So we'll take a look at the main component that we created, and it's going to be responsible for creating the main entry point of your injections. So here we define that it includes additional modules. This main component, it needs app module and also portfolio module. Android injection module is something that's provided by Dagger framework to make the work with activities a lot easier. So let's take a look at the app module. Here we have the main activity initialization, which is used to let Dagger work with the main activity. So if you don't have this here, it means that main activity won't be able to make use of dependency injection. Also, we provide means to create and, acquire references to classes like shared preferences and application, which is in our case is project application. Also, if we want to use shared preferences, we could just create this we could just delete this line, but we'll just keep it here as an example. So for example, if you need some kind of service or another reference to some kind of Android service, internal system service, so that would be the right place to put it. And now, portfolio module. Here we define dependencies and how to create them for retrofit framework. So at the very top, we create HTTP client. And when we have this, it means Dagger knows how to create HTTP client. We can pass this reference here. Well, we won't be passing it, but Dagger will figure out that automatically. It will acquire this OKHTTP client reference from this method, and then it will be able to create retrofit interface. Then using retrofit interface, it will be able to create IX data service. So modules basically can be used to define how certain dependencies will be created. Also, they have this singleton annotation, which is used to mark those created instances that they can be reused multiple times for different injections. Because if we won't have this here, it means that every time when we inject, let's say, retrofit class, it will always execute this entire code again and again. But if we have this singleton annotation, it will be saved and reused. Also, at the very top, we have stock portfolio list view activity and this submodule here to just mark that our stock portfolio list view activity is going to be injectable, and it will allow to get certain classes, the classes that we're going to need to be injected. Injecting dependencies into classes. Again, let's get back to the code. So we have all this almost ready to make it work. But let's go to the list view activity. So before activity is able to acquire the reference to the stock view model, it needs to call android.inject method. Android injection is provided by the Dagger framework, and it will automatically figure out that this class needs this reference, and it will automatically set this view model field to the instance of this class, stock view model. If we wouldn't have this, when we start the program, it would complain with null pointer exception when the first time we call this view model class. Also, we could do this a bit differently. We could call main component and call this method inject that we entered on this interface, and it then would also inject this view model. But I would recommend using Android injection because it's just simpler and it can be reused in multiple different classes. In the next video, we're going to take a look at the job scheduler framework.